All right, let's talk Marvel. With a huge new Avengers movie on the horizon, there's a pretty sharp analysis making the rounds that says Marvel's current strategy isn't about building some grand new legacy. No, it's about something much more basic: survival. And this quote right here, it just hits the nail on the head. This isn't a victory lap for the studio. The argument is that it's cinematic first aid. It suggests Marvel is in a desperate scramble to keep its whole brand from, well, from bleeding out. So what does stopping the bleeding actually mean here? Well, the core idea being pointed out is that Marvel has hit a really serious rough patch. We're talking about a string of projects that just haven't landed with audiences, so this isn't business as usual anymore. This is damage control. And we're not just talking about one miss. The analysis points to 3 consecutive box office flops, all leading right into their next massive team-up movie. That's not just a blip on the radar. That's a pattern. And it shows a really dangerous lack of momentum right when they need it most. If you kind of zoom out, you can see how we got here. Ever since Endgame, the whole plan was to pass the torch to new heroes, right? But it just hasn't really clicked. This year in particular has been so rough that the source calls Marvel one of the year's biggest losers. So now they're trying to build hype for a massive event like Doomsday, but the foundation just isn't there. Okay, so if that's the problem, what's the solution? Well, the analysis argues that the answer isn't to innovate or try something new. No, instead, it's a full-on retreat back to what worked before. We're talking about a nostalgia play. So you have to ask, what's the big plan? According to this critique, Marvel is basically hitting that big red emergency button. You know the one. It's got a glass cover on it that says, in case of flops, break glass. And there it is. The answer is simple, it's direct: bring back the original team. The whole strategy seems to be, forget trying to make audiences fall in love with the new characters. Let's just bring back the heroes everybody already knows and loves. And we're talking about the big 3, right? The whole thing reportedly hinges on getting Chris Evans, Robert Downey Jr., and Chris Hemsworth back in the saddle. The bet is that their combined star power will be enough to get everyone excited again, even if the story supporting them is a little shaky. Now this is where the interpretation gets really fascinating. The word is, they're revealing Steve Rogers' return a full year ahead of time, and that's not seen as a confident move. The critique calls it an act of sheer desperation, like they're trying to signal a guaranteed win way in advance because they're worried there's nothing else to build hype around. But here's the real heart of the critique. This move, this pivot back to the past, isn't being seen as some brilliant creative choice. It's seen as a creative failure. It's a shortcut that comes at the expense of what made those original movies so great in the first place: genuine, earned storytelling. The analysis actually came up with a perfect term for this: short-circuiting storytelling. And it's exactly what it sounds like. Instead of doing the hard work of building new character arcs and emotional stakes, you just zap, show a familiar face or an old costume, and let the audience's memories do all the heavy lifting for you. And yeah, this quote doesn't pull any punches, does it? The argument is laid out plain and simple. The strategy is seen as a deliberate substitute for quality writing. The emotional payoff you might feel in the theater won't be earned by the new film. It'll just be borrowed from a movie you loved a decade ago. But hey, let's just say it works. People show up in droves for the nostalgia. Does that actually solve Marvel's problem? To answer that, we gotta look at the money, because the financial stakes here are absolutely astronomical. So the speculation is that, yeah, Avengers Doomsday could be a huge box office hit. It could potentially rake in a number like $1.4 billion. And on the surface, that sounds like a massive, undeniable success. But that's where the next question pops up. Does a massive box office number automatically mean a movie is profitable? Not when the budget is just as massive. And for a movie like this, with all those stars and effects, the budget is going to be, well, staggering. And here's the really dangerous math. With a sky-high budget, plus all the marketing costs, even $1.5 billion box office could result in a tiny profit or even a loss. The critique draws a direct line to The Rise of Skywalker, calling this a potential billion-dollar flop. It's a movie that makes a fortune but costs so much that it's still not a real financial success. So really, when you boil it all down, whether this whole plan is a brilliant recovery or a colossal failure, it all comes down to one thing: execution. And this is where the analysis voices its most serious doubts. I mean, just think about the difference for a second. Infinity War and Endgame were amazing because they were the payoff for 6 years of careful storytelling. We knew the characters, we knew the stakes, and the villain, Thanos, had been teased for years. Doomsday, on the other hand, has almost no foundation. The main villain, Doctor Doom, hasn't even been properly introduced yet. The list of challenges here is just daunting. You've got a huge, complicated cast of new characters and old ones, no real setup for the big bad, and a general skepticism about whether the current creative teams can even handle a film this complex. It's described as a monumental task under the best of circumstances, and these are far from the best. And so, it all leads to this final, really provocative question. Bringing back characters we love might give the box office a short-term boost, a quick hit of nostalgia. But if the story holding them all together is hollow, is it really saving the franchise, or is it just delaying the inevitable? That is the billion-dollar question.